The privacy narrative is picking up steam. We've got Zcash that's outperforming everything else. We've got Dash that's also doing quite well. The question is there potential for Monero, for XMR? Can Monero potentially catch up? Let's have a look at the data most people aren't considering. Let's have a look at relative valuation charts and at on-chain data. So this month, Monero returned 44%. It's the third largest privacy token if we include Litecoin in the mix, because Litecoin does have an optional feature to increase privacy, but it's not enabled by default. And so we can see Monero as either being number 2 or number 3. It's very interesting to see how crypto runs in waves, right? There's always a narrative everybody trades, be it meme coins, be it decentralized finance. Now it's privacy tokens. We're currently at $421. We have been at a very similar level in the past. And the big question is there still enough upside potential? Because when we look at the market cap over time, there is slight inflation of XMR. So every peak is slightly higher than the previous one. We're currently at 7.75 billion of market cap. The prior peak was at 8.1 billion. Now here's a chart you've probably never seen before. This is the Monero price, the XMR price, relative to Zcash, to ZEC. How are the privacy coins competing against one another? And most of the time Monero did much better than Zcash, but that has recently changed with the Zcash rally. This here is an underperformance of 93%. It doesn't look as bad on the chart because this is a logarithmic scale, but here's the same on a linear scale. So really, Monero is currently very depressed within the privacy space. Is there potentially some upside here? I always like to look at relative valuations because an investment is always a choice for a specific opportunity. We do have opportunity costs, and while the comparison of Zcash to Monero might not be completely fair, I do think that the comparison of Monero relative to other altcoins is. And so then we get this chart. This is the Monero price relative to the altcoin market cap, the others market cap. Monero did get delisted on several centralized exchanges because of concerns around the privacy narrative. It is now picking up together with other privacy coins, but we are potentially at the higher end of a trading range. And the big question is, can we break out of that trading range, or are we coming back down with potential very painful ramifications? Again, there is massive resistance to overcome here. By the way, if this is not your very first time watching this channel, then feel free to subscribe over here. I publish videos regularly, and when you're subscribed, YouTube is more likely to recommend the videos of this channel again. The tokenomics of Monero look okay, as in we do have tail emissions that are at a constant Monero amount, but because the overall circulating supply increases over time, the percentage growth is on a slight decline. So the inflation rate is very comparable to Bitcoin at the moment. Bitcoin's inflation is at 0.83% per annum, which by the way is also very comparable with Ethereum's inflation rate right now. Bitcoin's and Monero's inflation rate is fixed. Ethereum's inflation rate is not fixed. That's dependent on how much Ethereum is used. So we do know that Bitcoin will become more rare in 2028. For Ethereum, we need to see more usage. For Monero, we've got our fixed supply schedule. What's interesting though is when we look at tokenomics and we only see differences of 0.5, 0.4%, it doesn't really make that much of a difference long term on the price. It's really then the demand that's driving the price. Because have a look at this. This is the merge. This is when Ethereum moved from proof of work to proof of stake. So the circulating supply of Ethereum didn't grow as quickly anymore. At the beginning, the supply even shrunk. But have a look at Ethereum's price development relative to Bitcoin's price development since the merge. Ethereum actually underperformed by 60%, despite the recent rally that was fueled by Tom Lee's Bitmine, right, the treasury company story. But in general, right, the tokenomics didn't really change the trajectory of Ethereum relative to Bitcoin, despite its token inflation having been lower, at least until the middle of last year. And so since we're already talking about Ethereum, let's have a look at XMR relative to ETH as well. And again, just from a technical analysis perspective, this is not the prettiest chart. We do have our lower lows, we do have our lower highs, and we are currently comparatively extended, as in the upside potential might not be as high as the potential risk. Now let's have a look at the perpetual futures market. The perpetual futures market allows to bet on assets with leverage, and there are arbitrage bots that trade between the perpetual futures and the spot market. So when there's a lot of interest in the perpetual futures futures, when many people bet on a certain price, this does have ramifications for the spot market as well. In the last 24 hours, we saw 243 million worth of trading volume on the spot market for Monero. We did have slightly more perpetual futures trading volume. The perp trading volume isn't yet massive, but definitely does have some impact on the price as well. Here's the trading volume on the perp market. It did recently spike slightly, and here's the funding rate on the perp market. So most people are actually betting on rising prices of Monero now. Most people want to ride the privacy wave. Or in other words, it became the popular trade that Monero might be rising after the Zcash rally, so that there might be some capital rotation from Zcash to XMR. At least the majority of perpetual futures traders think so. Otherwise, it wouldn't cost as much to bet on rising prices of Monero. The open interest, so the amounts of bets on Monero, are also spiking. And that's a measure of how much short-term capital there currently is in the asset. Whenever this is high, the spot price tends to be elevated as well. Whenever this is low, the spot price tends to be low. So seeing open interest already being that high is not great, because if that leverage exits Monero again, that would depress the price. The current rally might last a bit longer because, again, the tops in the market caps tend to grow from wave to wave. So potentially we could hit more than 10 billion in market cap, which is also somewhat in line with the relative valuation to Ethereum or with the relative valuation to the others market cap. So it's definitely still possible that the current momentum will continue for a bit longer. But what happens afterwards? What happens with the price development once we hit $500, maybe $600 per XMR? I think the risk will be extremely high because, again, Monero is already the third or second largest privacy token, and it will likely only continue to outperform if the entire privacy narrative continues to attract capital. I'm not so sure if Monero will be a long-term outperformer within the privacy space, and sometimes the narrative changes, right? Just a few months ago, everybody talked about DeFi and everybody talked about meme coins. At some point, privacy might also get out of fashion again. It has happened several times in the past. That is true for Monero. It's also true for Zcash. There is much more volatility than most people dare to admit. If you got some value out of this video, feel free to give this a like. You can also subscribe. I publish videos regularly. Feel free to also check out the premium membership. A link pops up here on the screen. This is where I share my own trades. Feel free to check it out. See you next time on YouTube or see you on premium. Cheers.